Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview another game involving SEC football teams. We're doing every SEC game this year. We're previewing on our channel. Today we get to Bowling Green, which is visiting Mississippi State. Both these teams had results that were sort of notable last week. We thought State would go into LSU and win. It did not. So State coming off a disappointment. Bowling Green had come in at 0-2. Went to a Marshall team that had come off a huge road win at Notre Dame. Bowling Green pulls an upset. So these are two programs, one coming off an emotional high, another coming off an emotional low. And oh, by the way, big game ahead next week for State.
It's an interesting setup because it's kind of, you talked about Bowling Green playing a Marshall team that had just beaten Notre Dame. Now you got Bowling Green bouncing back and, having to play a Mississippi State team who's coming off a loss that it feels like a game it should have won. So it's almost like a pretty fascinating dynamic here in terms of like this is a lot of points for a team that just beat, a Marshall team that beat Notre Dame. So that's the first thing that kind of stood out to me. But then you think about it and you do feel like it's kind of that spot where, all right, coming off a huge high, maybe that's where Marshall was in when they played Bowling Green. Now Bowling Green coming off a huge high, beating Marshall, and maybe they have a bit of a letdown here against Mississippi State. So, that's kind of the psyche behind this one. But I tell you, Bowling Green, Chris, one of the more interesting 3-game schedules this season in terms of the outcome. You could probably throw out the one against UCLA where they lost by 28 to start the season, but then they have a 7 overtime game that they lose to Eastern Kentucky. They win in overtime against Marshall. So maybe your best bet here is for this game to go into overtime because they've already played 8 of those periods this season. So that is kind of a fascinating setup as well.
Tongue in cheek, but yeah. I mean, I'm not down on State after losing to LSU. No. But I hope for better. That's the team I planted my flag on, is the one I thought would maybe most exceed expectations. We know State is running the ball a little bit more, but it's mostly going to throw it. And Bowling Green has not been good at defending the pass. It's given up over 300 yards all 3 games. I think we kind of know what's going to happen when State's got the ball.
Yeah. I mean, what their offense approach is going to be. That's not going to change. You would like to see, I think if you're a Mississippi State fan for sure, to kind of see the offense bounce back after last week. And like we said, I mean, they had their opportunities against LSU. They just, you just can't make some of those mistakes that they made in that game. And I think it's something where you would like to, because they did play so well, in those first 2 games. Now, competition was different with Memphis and Arizona, but I think that was certainly a disappointing, and you feel like you really left some things on the table there at LSU, but that's not to take anything away from LSU. But like you said, Bowling Green is going to be challenged here just in terms of knowing that Mississippi State's going to throw the ball a ton. And I think you would love to see a bit more of a crisp offensive performance if you're Mike Leach, just in terms of, what Will Rogers is able to do. But really overall, I think just being a bit more clean on the offensive side of the ball.
That strange look I gave a minute ago is we're sitting here, and this is maybe a spoiler alert. The over-under this is 56.5. And I'm like, am I getting this right? But I think Bowling Green has given up 626, 442, and 547 yards in 3 games, allowing 45, 59, and 31 points. So I'm looking at this going, am I looking at the wrong column here?
And this is the best offensive team they played to this point. So,
yes.
It's an interesting thought here. But I always say that anytime you have those that you look at and you're just like, what is going on here? There's always a reason. Like there is something. And, it's kind of just, there are some of those spreads sometimes. And again, we don't do this professionally, but when you see some of those, it makes you kind of rethink some things because it's, like, okay, well, surely it shouldn't be that low, but there's got to be a reason. But I'm with you. I mean, I think on a good day here, Mississippi State could put up 50 themselves. Maybe it's just not having
State might cover the over under on its own.
I was gonna say that's something to think about here. I'm kind of with you, but we'll kind of dissect it a little more, I guess.
Well, before we look at the other side of the ball, there's some big games coming up in the SEC. To add some excitement to that, we at Southeastern 14 will be making picks in the Stakes app. That's STAKES. We want to hear from you guys if you agree or disagree with our takes. So go to playwithstakes.com/14. Sign up for stakes. Place your prediction on our question. If you use the invite code Southeastern14 when you sign up, you get a double welcome bonus. Okay, when Bowling Green's got the ball, now they've moved it some too since the opener against UCLA had 162 yards, 431 versus Eastern Kentucky, 377 against Marshall. They do not run the ball well at all. Now they do throw the ball pretty well, and State's got some pass rush. State's got some guys in the secondary. Maybe that's where this comes back together. I try to deduce things on what Vegas is thinking. And what I do is I look at the spread, look at the over-under, and take the implied final from that, which is about 43-13 in State's favor. I feel like State is going to score more than that. I feel like Bowling Green may score more than that too. And you look at State's games, again, I think it's got a solid defense, but it gets in those high possession games. It gave up what? 24 to Memphis. I think some of those came late. 17 to Arizona, which was actually good. And then it gave up 31 to an LSU offense that's not been world beaters. So, yeah, I'm looking at this thinking I still like the over. And 30 is also a lot of points here, Blake.
Here's what you want to see if you're Mississippi State, and I think this is where this game can get interesting. Turnovers have been an issue like that. It's been a problem so far. And I don't know that it's that surprising, right, in terms of just how they're going to play offensively. But I mean, what against Arizona, they turned it over 3 times. I'm trying to think, was it Memphis that they turned over 2 or 3 times? I think two. So I think those were they turned over 2 times against Memphis, and then they turned it over last week, right,
Yeah, they're
against
-2
LSU.
on the season. They were -1 against Memphis in turnovers, -1 against LSU, even against Arizona.
Yeah, but I mean, 3 one game,
But it been
two
turning,
another
yeah.
game, two another game. Like that's averaging two or more turnovers a game to this point in every game. Like that's not an ideal thing to kind of have your setup here leading into this game. So I think that's really what I would look at in this one. I mean, they just got to start. They've got to eliminate some of these turnovers, and that's what it comes down to. And I think if they do that here, they will be able to put up some points because, like you said, I think this is a defense that has allowed a lot of points to this point in the season. So I'm with you. I think that the over is probably, looks like one of the more glaring, obvious choices of the season. But anytime I say that, there's usually a reason why it's going to go the opposite direction. But I think that number is being driven up quite a bit to this point. I think this is a nice bounce back spot for Mississippi State, and I think there is the let up possibility for Bowling Green coming off that big win against Marshall. But it is an early kickoff. You just never know with some of those kind of games. I think it's the mindset and those things like that. I mean, look, Bowling Green could just as easily ride that momentum and make this very interesting. If Mississippi State comes out a little sluggish coming off that loss against LSU, I think there's a couple different ways, this thing could play out. But I tend to think that this is kind of a bounce back spot for Mississippi State and an opportunity for them to really kind of flex their offensive potential here in this game.
Okay, so we are not professional bettors. We don't aspire to be professional bettors, but we watch a lot of SEC football, follow the league heavily. We have our opinions. I'm thinking the under and Bowling Green to cover seem like the smartest options to me if you're going to look at this one. Do you agree or disagree?
I would go the over and Bowling Green to
Did I say
cover.
the under? I meant
Yeah.
the over. I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
was gonna say, yeah, I would that's the two I would say probably. Just given what we've seen from both these teams, I think that's probably the best setup for this one. So
Okay, we are picking every SEC game this season on our channel. Best way not to miss those is hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching. Thank you for our sponsor, Stakes. We'll see you again soon.